All right, good evening. I'm calling to order not the select board meeting as planned, but rather we've converted this to a workshop because we unfortunately cannot get the public to be able to view the meeting or participate in the meeting via live stream. We're having technical difficulties, and I think some of our equipment broke down. So apologies to the public and apologies to our guests who are school board members here that we have tonight. But because we don't want to further inconvenience them, we're going to go ahead with what was a discussion item to have dialogue between the select board and the school board tonight. That is going to be posted later tonight or certainly tomorrow for people to be able to access. The first item on the agenda was going to be a public hearing on two warrant articles, one having to do with regulating of consumer fireworks, the other having to do with solar farm ordinance. Both of those were previously voted to be placed on the warrant articles by this board. State law requires us to have a public hearing, even though no changes can be made to them. And so we are going to reschedule that public hearing that's statutorily required by Zoom at 5:30 tomorrow. Then the only item that we will actually be then doing tonight is the discussion with our school board members. So again, thank you for coming. Thank you for your patience. We're sorry for the snafu. I don't recall this ever happening before to us, but unfortunately you had to experience it. So we have here with us Sarah Bradley Prinville, Marcia Dietrich, and the vice chair, I think, of the school board, Brianna Gutierrez. And we asked the school board members to join us tonight to have a dialogue with the Rockport Select Board. One of the provisions in our town charter, Article 1, Section 5, states that the school board officials are elected to represent the interests, concerns, and public education-oriented ambitions of Rockport residents, and as such should be responsive to concerns and requests for information and dialogue with Rockport Select Board, committees and boards, and the citizenry in general. And because we have sometimes experienced a number of issues here at the Select Board or made some comments about our concerns, we thought that it made a lot of sense to invite you and start having that dialogue, and hopefully we can continue some level of dialogue in the future. We all know that the elephant in the room is the fact that, you know, we have the school assessment litigation pending, and we will all try to stay away from that litigation discussion because we shouldn't be discussing it in this kind of setting, as I'm sure you all appreciate, and the board does too. So we did provide some questions in advance to you about questions that various members of the board had submitted to Bill Post. And so I thought maybe we could go through those one by one. Does that work?
That's perfect, thank you.
Great. And you guys just jump in. For the residents, those watching eventually, I'm going to read the questions, one by one. The first is as follows. It is reported the superintendent received a 3% raise and a $7,070 bonus, which is unusual for a government entity. Raising these questions. First, are the above, meaning 3% and the $7,000 bonus, contractually required? Second, how was the 3% raise derived? How was the $7,070 bonus derived? Fourth, what basis did the school board use to award a bonus knowing the funds are from taxpayer funds? And fifth, did other employees receive bonuses? If so, what positions and what amounts? So I invite you all to go ahead and respond to those and start off the dialogue, and we hopefully will address each of those
I'll go ahead and answer that
subcomponents.
first question. Neither of those is actually contractually required. The 3% raise speaks to the system that we have for recognizing performance of our administrators. Their change in salary every year is based on their performance, and it can range from 0 to 3%.
Marcia, I'm sorry to interrupt you. Can we get rid of the noise? I don't know what's going on here. And Marcia, could you speak a little bit better more directly into the microphone, because I'm
Okay.
having a hard time hearing
It's
you.
probably
Maybe
taller than I am, but
I'm sorry.
and so that represents Maria having received an excellent performance evaluation.
The
Our other
3%.
principals also are subject to the same type of consideration when their salaries change. The $7,070 bonus was derived in recognition of the building project, which added at least 15 to 20 hours a week of work for the last 2 years, and that money was paid for out of the construction project. The other employees who received those bonuses for the construction project was the facilities director, who received $7,500, and the principal of the middle school, who received $5,000.
I'd be happy to add in that the administrators, it has been ongoing practice, and that's part of also a 360 review of all those administrators. So there's parent survey involved, the board, for Maria's position, the board members are involved, teachers and staff. So it is those outcomes are based on 360 reviews, and that's just been the standard practice there. And in terms of the bonuses that Marcia mentioned, it was in recognition of the way above and beyond for all of those people, the extra hours, the extra time, way above and beyond their job descriptions. And I want to say they also did an incredible job getting this project done and under budget, that we really couldn't have done it without all the extra work that they did. So, and it was a big discussion. It was not casual, but it was in recognition of work done far exceeding expectations, and really keeping things in budget and on time and going along properly.
So then it's your understanding, based on what I've heard, I think, that the bonuses are not something that we would expect to see on a regular basis.
Exactly. It was really based on these building projects, and they were a one-time, and that's why they were a one-time separate thing. There was a discussion about whether there should be just a raise, and we separated those out for that reason.
Because the raise would be an ongoing, everything would be built off of that year to year, whereas a bonus would be a one-time in recognition of a special situation.
There was a
Right.
line in the building project for construction manager, and that is the line in which we were able to find these funds.
The
Project manager.
owner's representative,
Yes.
Right.
yeah.
And what about the owner's representative? We're familiar with that, with the library, obviously, and so
I'm
forth.
sorry, I couldn't hear you.
We're familiar, of course, with the
Yeah.
owner's representative concept with the library and so forth. But what was your point about the owner's representative? I didn't catch that from Marcia.
It's the budget line in the project. We had money left in that particular line
Okay.
that funded these bonuses.
Okay.
So the middle school project came in under budget? and-
Yes.
Well, it's not 1,000% done,
Yes.
but everything is on target and under zone at this point. Yes, yep. And it was to say, we as board members monthly get updates on all of that, and it's been incredibly well managed, and it's been a huge task. And I think we can all appreciate there's been extraordinary variables to make that all happen.
So what I'm hearing you say is that the bonuses weren't something that was normally in your budget for the year, but yet was leftover money for the school and was an afterthought?
No,
It was part of the building project funding.
Right. But it wasn't in your normal
No,
school budget?
no,
And there was money left over in your,
yes. I mean, we did have an owner's rep, but we did not fully expend that line.
I'm just trying to fathom. fathom.
Any further questions? Okay, thank you. Okay, the second item, and I think you've been, you've referred to this in your prior one. What is the goal setting and review process for the school district, school board, and superintendent? How does that correspond with salary increases and bonuses? And Sarah, you referred to.
I think I already, sorry, I jumped ahead and answered that one.
Yeah, 360
Apologize.
reviews, right.
Yeah, and we go through that, so every, there are surveys, there's surveys of staff, the administrators participate in that, parents participate that, each individual board member participates in that. The board meets together to discuss and go over that, to put to an overall performance goal together, coagulating that. So it's very extensive. And also we're all, you know, you probably have similar processes here, and maybe I'm jumping ahead again, but you know, we are also, there are goals that Maria is working to meet constantly, and we get reports on those monthly, and those are part of the public record as well. So, you know, what she's doing and accomplishing, and the goals that she's meeting are really thoroughly. I don't think any of us don't know what she's up to. Yeah.
So we actually gave Bill a packet of information, just if some of them will be, you have it.
Yes.
So in there is her most recent report to the board from our meeting last week, and she does a mid-year review in accordance with her strategic plan, and then an end-of-year review too. So we do have a strategic plan we're following, and part of her review is her compliance with that strategic plan, so.
Yeah, we left in your packet is a copy of our strategic plan, and almost all of our administrators are reviewed based, at least in part, on their progress, meeting the goals in the strategic plan.
Is that 360 review, is that annually?
Yes.
That process is
Yes.
annual? Okay.
Yeah.
The third question, again, I'm reading questions that had been submitted from all the select board members, so don't take these as, you know, your own necessarily.
Right.
The third one, is there any input sought from the towns when raises or bonuses are being considered? Meaning the town select boards, I guess, or anyone else in the town?
Well, the answer to that is no. I mean, we do survey parents, we do talk to people who are not on the board and who are only receiving our services, but I don't think any of us would expect you to have any detailed knowledge of a job performance. By the way, I want to add to that last question, also in that packet is a copy of the actual procedure that's used to evaluate the superintendent.
Great, thank you.
Yep.
Thank you, we just received this tonight, so obviously we'll.
Yeah,
we'll
of
look
course,
through it.
of
And we only
course.
have one copy, so
But
we'll.
we can leave copies here if people want to, more people
Yeah,
want to
no,
look
we'll
at them.
be,
Yeah.
okay, and we'll be happy to distribute this for everybody to
Great,
look
thank
at on
you.
the select board. Thank you for bringing it. Okay, the next question is, that it's reported that all the management positions received anywhere from a 2 to 7% raise. How were they derived? I think we've covered that in part. Was a wage study done to include the superintendent, and if so, how recent? And I would really highlight that question with respect to the wage study, because that's something that Rockport is doing for all of its employees as well, so.
The what
So-
study, did you
Wage.
say?
Wage study.
Oh, wage study.
Yeah.
So we do those yearly, actually, and actually we have a pretty amazing, I think probably some of it comes from the state in terms of data that Maria can pull from when we have questions. And our goal is to be somewhere between the 75th and the 90th percentile, depending on the position. So when you talk about a 7% raise, I think that probably references our IT director, Colin Such, who was found to be far below market value for what he does, and so we adjusted for that. But generally, those raises are anywhere from 0 to 3%, again, based on that 360 feedback. I do have a little bit, so the superintendent is currently in the 86th percentile. Overall, our teachers are in the 93rd, and we do have some custodians that are in the 100th percentile for the state. Just to give you a snippet, but if there are specific ones you have other interest in, we can definitely go back and get those from Maria.
Does anybody have anything they want to add? Further questions? Okay. All right, so let me just say this before we go on to the rest of the questions. And I'm sure that this is not lost on you guys, but, you know, you ladies, my guys, that's the old Illinois thing coming back through. But for years on the select board, we get complaints from taxpayers all the time about the taxes. And it's frustrating for the select board because the increase in taxes is not coming from this select board, it's coming from the school district. So, you know, you might be familiar with, like, Doug Cole, when he was on the board, had a plexiglass sign that said 67 or 68% school. You know, I mean, these are not the exact percentages, 11 or 12% county taxes, and then the 20-something that was left over, you know, Rockport. So, I mean, it's not unusual for schools to be the largest part of any budget. I guess some of the things that are concerns for us is that it's a rising part of the budget for the most part. It's a huge chunk of our budget, and it is always, you know, 68% or north in that area. It is also something that taxpayers don't understand because they're not billed directly from the school, they're billed by us. And so they think that that's, you know, that school board amount, or they don't pay attention to how much of that school board amount, or that tax, overall tax amount is attributable to the school. So those frustrations are constantly being addressed by this board. And I think there's a frustration on the part of the board, this board and prior boards, that even though we're sitting here every budget season having to sharpen our pencils, not be able to do roads, not be able to, you know, to maintain the infrastructure of the town as much as we would like to do, there's a feeling, or there's a concern that the school board is not doing that kind of pencil sharpening, is not being as careful about the expenditure of taxpayer monies as we are. And whatever then comes out of the school makes us, you know, when the numbers go up, we further have to cut back. And then, of course, the taxpayers, you know, complain, understandably so, not only about the taxes they're paying, but the fact that they perceive that they're not getting anything from their money because they've got potholes in their streets or sidewalks that are crumbling. So that's the situation that we're in. So I don't know if you have any wonderful ideas of how to respond to that, how to help us, you know, address those concerns, how to address those concerns directly to taxpayers.
Well, we'd be very comfortable if you referred them to our budget hearings that we have. I mean, our finance committee meets probably for 3 months to put together the budget, and they're all public meetings, and they would welcome any kind of input. One of the booklets that you have there shows some of the historical tax increases for SAD 28, changes to the budget, 2012, 1.07%, 2013, 1.36%, 2014, 0.41%, 2015, 1.63%, 2016, 1.15%, 2017, 1.79%, 2018, 1.89%. Then we have the building projects, which were voted on separately, which bring them
Right, and that's a big chunk.
increases.
It's very
But,
large.
I mean,
Right.
voters should understand
But those
that
were
because
voted, those are voted
those
on,
are
of
voted
course.
in.
Yeah.
I understand,
So-
and I think you know, and I know that every time somebody sees something at the ballot box, oftentimes the reaction, if it's for schools, you vote yes, yes, yes. And I think that I personally think that people have to be a little bit more circumspect about that and have a better understanding of what they're voting for in that regard. But they do vote in favor of it, but also you guys propose it. So, I'm not saying you guys, I'm saying this, it can't be on that warrant article if it's not being recommended and approved by the school board. And it doesn't completely give the school board a pass to say that, well, the taxpayers recommend it, if in fact you guys are recommending things that are really beyond the ability of people to pay.
Short of it is if the public could write out 3 checks, one for us, one for the county, and one for you guys.
the amount, the amount that's going to schools is right on a person's
what-
tax bill.
But what happens is the clerks at the town office take a beating every time, not all the time, but for the most part, when people come in to pay their checks.
Yeah, that's
So if
unfortunate.
you would receive the check that would go to you, you'd have some of
So
that stuff too.
I completely, we all completely understand, and as you referred to, schools are a big part of any community's expense. Public education is, and I think we all appreciate that, and that when it is a big piece of a budget, and we can understand that that perception is easy to understand, that people are concerned about what's the biggest item. I have to say that I have been completely impressed with how managed this budget is. And I know that in different conversations with administrators, principals we've had in other schools, they've actually never seen a budget that's managed as tightly as this one. It's very, very thorough and vetted, and it is kept tight. About 68% of the budget is salaries, and those
Benefits.
are
Salaries and benefits.
the salaries and benefits, and those are contractual, and, so it just 68% of this budget is 68% of our budget is,
Yeah.
is salaries.
Yep.
And so, again, and those are contractual, and those are in place, and those have to do with student-teacher ratios, and those have to do with a lot of things that, on the other side, we have a lot of people that do show up to our meetings that want more teachers, want more, and we're on the other side often saying, no, we have zones of student-teacher ratios, we can't exceed them except under extraordinary circumstances. And so in terms of how to speak to the public about that, we understand, but I think that there are many opportunities, as Marcia suggested, for public comment, for public meetings, just like us, all our meetings are public. And then there are the line item hearings that happen every year, and the budget is presented to you all every year. So I do think that there's, these are tough decisions, and I think, I believe that I know that a lot of families move to these Camden and Rockport because our schools are so strong, and we have a very rich school system, and it's incredibly efficient. We actually get a lot for each of those tax dollars.
Do you have, at your meetings, would you say that most of the meetings are attended by parents, or do you have retirees or people who don't have kids, weighing in on the budget typically?
Well, a few years ago, there was an organization active called Value in Education, which was mostly retired people.
Yep.
Mr. Armentrout was sort of the leader in that, and for a number of years, he came to every meeting that we had. We often have meetings where no one's coming, but these days we've been Zooming, and then people who are watching can email questions in and get them answered at the meeting. I will say one beneficial thing that we did about 7 or 8 years ago, we entered into a contract with St. George which had left RSU 13, based in Rockland, and they maintain their own K through 8 school, and their students can choose their high school. And this year, we are generating $681,000 in tuition revenue, largely from students from St. George, a total of 55 students and 8 from Northport. So that directly offsets local costs. We have not incurred any additional cost to have these extra students.
No, if anything, they offset because they're sharing resources.
We also have 139 new students this year,
I was just going to ask you about that. 139, is that what it is?
and 79 are in the SAD, and 42 of them are families who've moved here from out of state attracted by the schools. And most of these people brought their jobs with them.
I think I'm going to skip ahead to another question, but just to talk a little bit about what we're looking at when we're looking at a budget, we asked our finance director to do a little bit of math in terms of if our administrators don't get any increase next year. We have a contract we just negotiated with food service workers, custodians, and bus drivers, so they get their contractually obligated increase. And we have a contract with teachers that will be negotiated this spring, so we don't know what that will bring for next year right now. But if we say they're not going to get any increase except their normal step, we also factor in the average 8% increase in benefits. That's going to be a 1.7% increase in our budget for next year. So if we were to bring, I think one of the questions later on is if we bring a $0 increase, that would have to result, just to pay those wages and benefits that we're required to pay, would require us to cut some kind of programming, a teacher, increase class sizes, a sport, whatever it is that we would have to do to make that happen. So that's, when we talk about those things, also what we're thinking about. And we do, for instance, I think one of the most recent sports we've added is hockey, and there was a lot of public, we heard from people very strongly. I wasn't on the board at the time, but I've heard the stories of people who come and want that. So it would be helpful if people in the community feel they want to counter that and come to us and talk to us about concerns about costs that, we're trying to be responsive to our constituents, but we can only be as responsive as what we are hearing from them.
One of the things that we did,
Hold on a second, sorry, Mark. The attorney has advised that we should not hold the workshop either, because the public cannot hear, and we couldn't notify them in time for them to be here. But because of the executive orders from the governor's office, the public has to be able to hear what's happening at the meeting.
thanks for coming.
They can't